When we are talking about bringing gender equality at workplace, there should also be the conversation which is more about gender equality at home. Maternity leaves cannot be just women, it has to be parental leaves. On one hand, you are trying to empower women. On the other hand, you're telling them, fine, this is only your job to take care of the kids. Unless and until you bring that balance in your own minds, it's not just about rolling out a policy. When I joined the corporate communication sector, the business heads were only males, and I was the only corporate communication person who was a female on the whole floor, or in fact in the whole building. It's an added pressure of performing as a woman also, not just as a worker. At the entry level, there are lots of women entering. And then suddenly, as you move on, from middle management to senior, the number keeps decreasing and there is higher attrition. The mindsets again needs to be re-nurtured, I would say. It all begins from the basic, I think, childhood conditioning. Men should be equally cooperative. I think empowering women is important as much as it is important for us to empower men at home.
And let's start with Shivani Gupta.
I'm Shivani Gupta, co-founder, managing director, SPAG, based out of India and Singapore. And of course, I have been in the PR and communication sector, I think from almost about 2 decades now.
We really want to delve into the core issues that impact diverse women in the field of public relations and communications.
Now from this part of the country, specifically coming with the not so, I would say, conservative background, but yes, my parents or anyone around, they've been more like, protective about, especially about the daughters. Timings, even what time are you going to be back, who's going to be there at work, who's going to be driving you back, or how are you going to be commuting back. So those are the things that, of course, the challenges, apart from the challenges at workplace. And when we started our career, it wasn't so much of a female dominating industry. So I think I have had my own inspirations from different aspects of life, whether the person was working with me or not working with me, whether it's a female leader somewhere out there who I was looking up to, or it's a male leader out there. So I had tried to pick up the certain aspects and attributes from each and everyone's lives and experiences. So I think that kept me going. There was one point in time I had, when I joined the corporate communication sector, so it was only men around, my, position. So it was only the business heads were only males, and I was the only corporate communication person who was a female on the whole floor, or in fact in the whole building. So, I mean, initially it was more like very intimidating. How does this work? And how are you supposed to kind of deal with so much of pressure? Because, it's an added pressure of performing as a woman also, not just as a worker. I tried not to pull me down. So again, I think I just kept going and went with the flow and did my bit. And yes, I think what I feel is that you have to, from each and every situation in life, you pick up the silver lining.
Being in a room full of people who don't look like you, you feel like you stand out, that you're different, right? And that perhaps you don't belong, maybe. Shivani, does that feel, can you relate to that in your experiences in business?
PR sector, how it works, PR and communication sector. So generally I have seen at the entry level, there are lots of women entering. And then suddenly, as you move on, from middle management to senior, the number keeps decreasing and there is higher attrition. So when you reflect back, I think, is it more because of the, the challenges of the PR sector? Is it the, the stress level that people face here that is more intimidating, and people are not able to cope up with in terms of the pressures at home and pressures at expectations, which is there in the boardroom or at workplace. So how do you manage that is something, you will have to be well prepared with. So I think when you are entering any sector, it's not a PR sector, any sector that you're entering, the preparedness of the mind is something which is very important when you enter. Like you're asking, when there is a meeting room and there are too many men out there, it could be any sector or any workplace. But how do you manage that is something that has to come from within. So yeah, I think that is something which we all need to work towards, and we all need to push each other for, and which is what I think the mindsets again needs to be conditioned, reconditioned, and re-nurtured, I would say.
Wow, re-nurtured. But when it comes to race and classism and sexism, here in the US, racism is front and center. It's right up front in our faces. But in India, can you talk a little bit about what does that look like?
So in India, of course, more from racism, yeah, but in terms of the gender disparity, again, it all begins from the basic, I think, childhood conditioning that starts from, like when you're talking about the upbringing of a child, whether it's a man or a woman. I think so. There was an example that struck me, which it never leaves my mind. I read about it. There was an experiment done in a classroom, of I think first grade students, and there were boys and girls. They were all given sweets to be, they were distributed sweets, and they were told that if you were to reward yourself, what would you reward yourself? How many sweets would you reward yourself with? So what happened was that the boys rewarded themselves more than the girls rewarded themselves with. So if girls rewarded themselves with the 1 or 2 pieces of chocolate, boys rewarded themselves with 3 or 4 pieces. So I think it's the conditioning which begins right from childhood, that girls are supposed to be more like caretakers, taking care of the family, taking care of course, things are changing, and there is a paradigm shift in terms of thinking, the thinking that of course the women will have career, women needs to have career, but thinking on the other side that men should be also participating in the household chores, men should be equally cooperative. I think empowering women is important as much as it is important for us to empower men at home. It is important for all of us to understand the equality everywhere. It's when we are talking about the conversations, bringing gender equality at workplace, there should also be the conversation which is more about gender equality at home. Unless and until that conditioning happens, and of course in this part of the world that conditioning is going to take a lot of, I mean, even if you are sending your girls out to make big careers, there are a lot of expectations. You'll do well, you'll be doing very well in the career, you should be the bread earner as well. But apart from that, you are also expected to be the caretaker of maybe the older people in the house or the children. So the balance is not there. There is an added pressure. The women are going out there, but of course there is an added pressure of performance, so which is kind of more like bringing too much of, I would say, the work pressure as well as the domestic pressure on women. So I think it is important for the society, it is important for the corporates, it is from all the directions. There is a need of the hour to put that the strategy, the concept in place, that there is an equality from all the angles, from whether you're talking about men, whether you're talking about women. So that effort has to be from all across.
Those are some great suggestions, especially starting when children are young and starting within your family, where that's supposed to be a very safe space to start growing that that way of life. I guess that's the best way to put it. And going back to the idea of racism, Shivani, in India, or perhaps it's more like sexism or is it classism? Which is it? And what do you think, what are you doing to personally make that change?
When you're talking about diversity and inclusiveness,
Yes.
I think a lot of corporates are now really putting their efforts and mind into it. We're working very closely with the HR and the leadership management, and the HR is working very closely in terms of to ensure that there is these two factors are going to be the key factors in hiring, and not only in hiring, also setting your HR policies. So that is something that we are looking at. But apart from that, again, like I said, it's not just one aspect of the whole, society. It's not just a corporate. I think the government policies have to be equally influenced, and they need to understand how the balance, when you are talking about maternity leaves, or you're talking about, just maternity leaves cannot be just of course women. It has to be parental leaves. I believe that, because if you are talking about diversity, you're talking about inclusiveness, how are you just talking about maternity leaves? You are not, on one hand, you're trying to build women, empower women. On the other hand, you're telling them, fine, this is only your job to take care of the kids. If, unless and until you bring that balance in your own minds, it's not just about, rolling out a policy. It's about what actual value will it bring to the gender, what actual value will it bring to the society. It's not, it's even men are equally, and I think millennials understand that very well. Millennials are very much ready to take up the responsibility. So I think it's more about nurturing that value. It's more about giving them the opportunity, empowering them with the opportunity. So parental leaves should be there. There should be a distribution of the leaves. I think those are the things that will help dealing with diversity and inclusiveness.